Good morning. It is Wednesday. Keith Tebow from FRC Media. And because it's Wednesday, that's our scheduled time that we meet with the mayor of the city of Fall River, Mayor Paul Coogan. Mayor, how are you this week?
Hey Keith, how are you?
I'm doing well. Let me just start. We've talked about this quite often, but late last week, you officially submitted the fiscal year 2024 city budget to the city council. It totals over $400 million. I want to ask some specific questions, but let me just ask you first, for an overview for people and what they can expect from the budget for the coming year.
Well, again, it's a balanced budget. We're trying to use a little bit of our lost revenue provision that we got out of the ARPA money because this could be our last opportunity to use it before it has to be committed by 24. So we used some of that in there. We did reduce the Durfee debt by about a half for the residents. We took a lot of the capital out to spend on ARPA. We're in a very good financial position. I think we've increased our free cash and our stabilization fund. So those are the things that long-term can help the city. And we're going to start having hearings with the councilors coming in over the next few weeks. And then we'll transition down to the council chambers for their hearings. And hopefully we can get it passed by the end of June.
Reading your letter that precedes the budget, you did mention all of what you said that, you're giving taxpayers a break in terms of the debt exclusion for Durfee. You also mentioned that the new diamond payment, the first payment is coming up this coming fiscal year, and you're going to be using free cash, I believe, to help make that payment this year. So that will not be borne by taxpayers. But you also showed some concerns. Future payments for Diamond, one. Also, there is I believe, some revenue decrease when it comes to the cannabis agreements in the city. Also, obligations for healthcare, which has gone up, and pension obligations, which have gone up, and inflation in general. Is that something that may be of a concern as we move forward?
Oh, those are all items of high concern. We put a number in the budget very conservative on our cannabis revenue because long term we believe that's going to go up a lot more. But at the same time, we're also trying to, as I said, build up our stabilization and our free cash so we have a little bit of a rainy day fund going forward. Health insurance going up across the country, pension costs going up across the country. These are all stresses that are on the city budget. We're going to have to deal with them. And that's how this is going to work. We did not put in the increased revenue that the Senate put in for unrestricted government aid. So there's a number of things where we kind of balanced it out on the conservative side, again, with the hope that we get a little bit of additional aid and we build up our long-term savings accounts.
And this is something I'm sure you're going to be asking also some help, maybe, or some suggestions from city councilors on ways that moving forward, especially when it comes to that diamond debt, that number will be starting to escalate next year. So you hoping to get some input from them as well on this?
That's a big thing. They obviously all voted for it, and we're gonna make sure we get it done. But we could sure use some assistance on that. I did talk to the council president about that. Another area that's going to cost more and more down the road is trash. We are right again now working with both Republic and Easy, looking at some opportunities where we can get some additional revenue with some savings, and we're gonna have to reorganize a lot of that trash pickup going forward because that's a cost that's going up and up and up. As more landfills close in Massachusetts, there's less places to put trash, and working with our companies, we're going to find a way to get around this.
And also this week on Monday, the school committee voted to approve the school department budget for FY 2024. That's also now in the hands of the city council. And we've talked about this before. There's a lot of opportunity ahead potentially for the school department because of increased spending, not only increased spending, increased revenue from the state primarily, but it also adds a burden to the city.
Right. I mean, our money goes up, our city contribution goes up, every time the state gives the schools more money. I mean, it is for the kids. It's funny because, we're in a very good financial position in the schools right now, but one of our conference partners, Brockton, I was reading about them this morning, they're laying off 130 teachers. Their enrollments dropped by 1,300. There's a shortfall in revenue up there. They're in a completely different world than us right now. I was just talking to the superintendent before I came on the air with you, Keith, and it's really kind of jarring because we're not in anywhere near that kind of position, and we're not in that position long term because of the Student Opportunity Act. So I don't know how they got there. So I'll maybe end up talking to someone in Brockton later today, but we'll be looking also to see if those teachers want to come to Fall River and work.
One of the opportunities for the school department, which has been talked about for a number of years, is expanding pre-K opportunities, and that has been a commitment for both you and the school department. I believe this week the school committee voted to execute a lease to find some space for that in the far south end, the former Atlantis Charter School. I actually remember that as a convent. I grew up in that part of the city. So it's on the top of what's called Townsend Hill. It's former Atlantis Charter School, and talk about how this will help the pre-K needs of the city.
I think that gives us the opportunity for 8 or 10 classrooms this fall for pre-K. Obviously the vote by the committee was unanimous to enter into the lease because it is a really good deal for both the city and the Fall River Public Schools. If we can get some kids in there and start getting some services to our pre-K population sooner rather than later, that's important. But long term, our intent is to utilize the whole building and make it a K-8 school in the south end to take the pressure off of like the Henry Lords, the Viverises, the Laternos. It'll give us some space where it's needed, and it's a great opportunity for the Fall River Public Schools and for the city of Fall River. They're working on the building now, from what I've been told, and hopefully we can get this lease finally settled up and move in there. Like I said, sooner rather than later, but I think it's going to be the fall.
And the city's also working on other opportunities in other parts of the city. That you talked about, this will be a benefit to the south end, but there are also opportunities for pre-K in other areas of the city. Talk about how that's moving forward.
Well, we're going to keep our lease with St. Anthony of the Desert on Eastern Avenue. We have, I think, 5 or 6 classrooms there that we're using. Don't hold me to the number, but we have pre-K kids going in there. We also have pre-K rooms in some of our elementary schools. And as I said, as soon as we start to move some students around, it's going to open up other opportunities. Be my intention down the road that we could have pre-K for everybody. And if we can pull off a couple of these ideas and turn them into actions, then I think we're going to be in a great spot.
How is this lease going to be paid? Is this through some of the ARPA money, the ESSER money for school departments in terms of paying for part of the lease, or is that's operational? I mean, how will some of this be paid?
Well, obviously, the school department's allowed to pay a lease, and they're looking at some areas where we weren't able to hire the number of teachers we budgeted for. There may be a little bit of a surplus in there. There obviously still is quite a chunk of ESSER money flying around. I'm not sure how they're going to come up with the means to pay for it, but there are a couple of golden opportunities right there. And going forward, obviously, the Student Opportunity Act has additional revenue for till 27. So I think we're only going to enter into a 5-year lease. So it's be the intent to pay this off as quickly as possible, and then transfer ownership. It would be a feather in the city's cap if we can rehab what was an abandoned building and make it into a show place for students.
All right, Mayor Paul Coogan, as always, good stuff happening in Fall River. We'll talk again next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith.
All right. And as always, thank you for joining us here on FRC Media. Have a great week.